Hello, welcome to Are You Seeing This? I am Mo.
And I'm Sarah.
And today I want to tell you about Steven Universe.
Yes. I've heard tale of this.
Steven Universe is a children's television show that it was very innovative and really made a lot of changes in terms of queer representation in children's shows, but for some reason gathered a fan base that was absolutely buck wild.
Are they still active?
So here's the thing about fandom. Any fandom that has ever existed is always existing, in my experience. So there was the show back in the 1960s called Dark Shadows, and it was like a soap opera with a vampire and a werewolf and like a witch and all sorts of things, and like had a big fandom, and like that fandom still around, and like there's new people entering that fandom. So like it's not as big as it used to be, but
I think I more meant like you refer to them as batshit, and then like will they come for us?
Maybe share this. And you know what? If you guys are fans of Steven Universe,
Mo said bring it on.
Listen, engagement is engagement. If you get really angry, you know what would really show us is if you share this on all your Steven Universe socials and tell everyone else to listen. So definitely get the word out about our opinions on Steven Universe if it affects you strongly.
But also, guys, you can change. We accept change. So if just because you were in the Steven Universe fandom doesn't mean we can't look at you and like say how far you've come.
Yeah,
we're so proud.
Yeah,
and if you haven't been on that journey yet, maybe this is your indication to start.
We can always heal.
We can, guys.
So the main thing before I tell you anything else, I want you to keep in mind this is a children's television show, and I feel like children's cartoons kind of have a scale of like in terms of the age range it's targeted at. And I know we've enjoyed, Avatar: The Last Airbender and Gravity Falls. Right. Those two shows feel like their audience is a little older than Steven Universe. Just from what I saw of Steven Universe, I strongly felt like it was at a younger audience than the other cartoons that were popular with adults.
What channel, what network was it on?
It was on Cartoon Network, but each episode was I think each episode was like 10 or 15 minutes long. Like, they're not long shows.
We're talking a SpongeBob.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So SpongeBob's half an hour. But I'm following.
Yeah. I didn't remember how long SpongeBob was. I was just going with it. I was like, yeah, sure, totally. Yes, and. Okay,
I appreciate
keep in mind, this is a show for children. So, Steven Universe.
Okay.
Steven is... Okay. So, within this world, we have Earth.
Wind and fire.
And humans.
It's September. Somewhere. No, it's not.
And so, but there's also, I forget what the other planet is called, but there's this other planet with aliens. And the aliens are gemstones. They're called the crystal gems. Mm-hmm. And they're all, so they don't really have gender on the crystal planet, but they're all kind of portrayed, and most of them are voiced by women, so like it's kind of like a lesbian planet anyways, but but it gets more complicated because they also have like a very strict code of conduct among the crystal aliens, the crystal gems, and I can't remember all the rules, but they're basically ruled by, like, people refer to it as a dictatorship. I thought it was just a generic...
Because I was like, I heard all women, and I was like, oh, so this is back to the nunnery.
Yeah. See, this is why I was excited to tell you about this. We haven't even touched... We're barely touching the tip of the iceberg. So we start with Steven. Steven is half human, half crystal gem. His mom was a crystal gem. His dad is a human. So he lives with his dad. His dad's raising him alongside his mom's, like, 3...
That is inclusive. We have a deadbeat mom instead of a deadbeat dad.
So she's dead.
Okay.
Oh, that'll be a great clip.
Okay, inverse Peter Parker, still inclusive. R.I.P. girlie, sorry to call you a deadbeat.
Oh, there you go. She kind of died. So here's the thing. Crystal gems don't have sex the way humans do, and they don't produce children the way humans do.
This is touched upon in this show?
Okay, so here's, yes, so it's explained. So, like, I mean, we don't touch upon, obviously, adult content because it's a children's show, but, like, we do understand that, like, Rose, so Steven's mom is the rebel leader, Rose Quartz, or was. She shape-shifted into a human form to be able to be pregnant with Steven and give birth to him. But obviously this goes against crystal gem biology, and so Steven's birth basically killed her, and now he is the rose quartz gem. So, like, where his belly button would be is a gemstone.
Ew. I don't like that. I'm sorry.
It looks cute in the cartoon drawing, I swear. And so the first season, I'm going to be really honest with you, I skipped most of the first season. And because most of it was very, again, it's a children's show. A lot of the episodes were just a bit, I felt a younger audience than and I just wasn't enjoying them. And by the time I got into the show, we were already on, like, season 2 or 3, and people were talking about major plot movements happening there, so I just skipped.
So you watched it, like, live back when, like, all I'm thinking of is, like, Guess Who's A and Pretty Little Liars, with, like, the Twitter.
Yeah.
So, like, you watched it when you were actively seeing feedback.
Yeah, like, I got into it, like, towards the end, but... Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, I would watch the live reaction on Tumblr. Like, I would go onto Tumblr, and everyone would be like, oh, this happened and this happened.
Sarah, of course it's not Twitter, it's Tumblr.
It's Tumblr, yeah.
Of course.
Okay, so Steven is half human, half gemstone. He is being raised by his single dad, who is a former rock star, who lives in his van, but Steven lives in an ancient temple with 3 crystal gems who were in his mom's rebellion. So there's Garnet, who's really cool, Amethyst, who's, like, kind of drawn and portrayed as more on the younger side, and Pearl, who was, like, Rose Quartz's bodyguard / BFF, and, like, took Rose Quartz's death the hardest, but her way of, like, dealing with it is to just go all in on mothering Steven.
Interesting that we're getting trauma responses in this children's TV show.
Oh, there's so much trauma responses. Because this is all happening after a war between the rebellion and the Crystal Gem government. Monarchy, it's like a whole thing. Because the Crystal Gem Society is ruled by the diamonds. So there's blue diamond, yellow diamond, and I believe the last one is white diamond. And we hear about pink diamond, and it's implied that Rose Quartz killed pink diamond. It's a whole thing.
That's a really good Charlie XCX song.
Which part?
There's a Charlie XCX song called Pink Diamond.
Oh, okay. I got you.
I forget from last time that I know you have a genre. I apologize.
So the first season is mainly, like, Steven developing magical powers and going on magical adventures, and it's all very cute. Eventually we learn about this thing called fusion, which is where 2 gemstones can fuse together and become one gemstone. And, like, so the person who is they can fuse and become another person, and that person is, like, a representation of their relationship, but is also a person in their own mind, in their own, like, soul and consciousness, kind of. So fusion is, like, basically forbidden and taboo on the Crystal Gem planet, but Rose Quartz...
What is this, like, no babies, no relationships?
Well, they can't produce babies, but the fusion is, like...
But one person did.
Well, yeah, but she had to shapeshift and she died doing it.
Oh, okay. That's right. I forgot about that.
You forgot about the dead mom. We want to make it clear we respect dead moms on this.
I have a feeling it's going to be hard for me to remember her. This is a fictitious dead mom who was a crystal.
That is okay. Very fair.
I think it's okay.
So
I'm doing my best, you guys.
So Steven basically fights the government of the Crystal Gem Planet, and a lot happens.
How old is Steven?
That's a great question. I think he's 12. He slowly grows up over
and he's
the course.
Fighting a government?
I mean, it's your average children's television show where, like, Aang takes on the entire Fire Nation. Well, he doesn't do it by himself. He has his friends. And Steven has his friends, and,
It's just interesting to be like, he took on the government, you guys. This 12-year-old boy.
He took on a whole planet's government.
I see, okay.
And so back to fusion. So fusion is taboo, but we learn that one of the crystal gems, I don't know how to tell you this so that it'll have the same shock for you that it had for everyone else watching it. So I'm just going to say it, and I need you to just pretend to be a little bit shocked. Garnet is actually a fusion of two gemstones.
Cool.
Thank you for that. Okay. So Garnet is actually...
I'm sorry, I also just looked up the gem belly button, and it is not as cute as you're claiming it is. I actually think it looks worse than anything I could have imagined.
Of all the
And what is they sell a toy of him with the shirt up? What are we doing, guys?
Yeah.
What is this? What are we doing? I don't get it. I'm sorry.
I don't know who's selling that. It's probably a fan, because I doubt Cartoon Network still has,
You're too much of a fan. Stop making that.
Okay. So, moving on. Garnet is a fusion of Ruby and... Oh, gosh. Hold on. I don't remember. So, okay. Ruby and Sapphire. So, Ruby and Sapphire... So, basically, Garnet is a fusion of these lesbians. And the lesbian love is forbidden. That's the metaphor, okay? That's the metaphor most people interpret it with.
So, he was raised by two moms.
The creator of the... What?
He was raised by two moms.
He was raised by several moms, because he was also raised by Pearl.
No, but if Garnet's a fusion...
Had an unrequited... Yeah, so he was raised by Garnet, which basically means he was also raised by Ruby and Sapphire. So he was raised by two moms, but he was also raised...
So that's two moms in one. That's efficiency.
Yeah. It's very lesbian.
Very.
And so then there's Pearl, who actually was, we later find out, in love with Rose Quartz. And I think it's an unrequited love, because Rose Quartz went ahead with this human dude who was a rock star and had a baby and died making the baby. And then
there's a Chappell Roan song about that.
There is. and then Pearl is left to help raise Steven. And then Amethyst, I don't really feel comfortable saying Amethyst is a mom, because I feel like Amethyst is written more younger. So I feel like Amethyst is more like a sister.
She's a cousin
to Steven, if anything, or like a big sister, or a really young aunt. He also has other humans he befriends and goes on adventures with. The main person being Connie, who is his best friend, and then later I think his girlfriend, and then he and Connie fuse, which is weird because Connie's human, but I guess because he's a crystal gem, half of a crystal gem, he can make the magic, so they fuse into a person. Yeah.
Is Connie okay?
Yeah, Connie's fine. Connie's chill. Connie's happy swinging a sword around.
Okay.
Her mom's a doctor, I think, and is concerned.
No, but through the fusion process, because she's not a gemstone.
Yeah, she's fine. Oh yeah. Her physical well-being is fine. Mentally, she's fine. She's
okay. Chill. Okay. Once you fuse, can you go back, or is that it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can fuse, unfuse all the time, no matter what.
Oh. I thought it was one and done.
That's how we find out about... No. You can...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I like that.
Okay. So, moving on. So, Blue Diamond is really sad all the time because...
She's blue.
Pink Diamond is dead.
Oh.
And Yellow Diamond, I think, is just, if I remember correctly, is just kind of angry and and then there's White Diamond, who is basically the official authority on every other crystal gem, including the other diamonds, and is the ultimate force of power and the person enacting all of the restrictions on society within the crystal gem planet. So
the White Diamond, really?
So at the end of the show, Steven basically, so plot twist, because throughout the whole show we're Rose Quartz killed Pink Diamond, And that's a really horrible crime. And that's why the Diamonds are so angry at Steven, because they don't understand Steven as a separate person. They just know he has the same gemstone and sees him as an extension of Rose Quartz, and basically just Rose Quartz. So plot twist.
I love a generational feud like that.
Yeah.
Where they don't even know him, but they just see the gemstone and it pisses them off. I love it.
So it's revealed that Rose Quartz didn't really kill Pink Diamond because Rose Quartz was Pink Diamond. Pink Diamond shapeshifted into the form of Rose Quartz and then did all of that and faked her death, and Pearl was a part of that.
Okay. Why?
Because Pink Diamond / Rose Quartz didn't want to deal with... They wanted to do something evil to Earth. I can't really remember. I watched the show a long time ago. I remember all the big plot points. I just remember it was something... Pink Diamond fell in love with humans, something. Diamonds see the world in black and white terms, and only their rule of law is correct, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
So this is a show about, like, does he beat the Diamonds at the end?
So basically he ends the conflict with love and friendship, because again, this is a children's show.
Then why have a theme of the rise and fall of, like, a colonial dynasty?
Okay, I see what you're saying, but here's the thing. I've heard for, like, years people say Steven Universe justifies fascism and tells everyone they should just try to befriend dictators. And my point of view is this...
Sorry, go ahead and then I'll go off.
My point of view is, again, this is a show for children. And it's not really meant to be a guiding moral principle for adults. It's meant to teach kids very simple lessons like, if you get into an argument with your friend on the playground, you should try and talk it out and still be friends with them instead of having a feud with them. You know, or just because you don't like something...
Like sharing is caring and sharing basic communication skills.
Tolerance of people's differences, acceptance of people who are different from you, be friends, not enemies, etc. Like, people whose biggest conflict is, you know, who on the playground is on the swing set and why aren't I on the swing set? You know, like that level. And so for years I've heard people just get very obsessed with this show and then get very upset with the creator, even though... So here's the thing. The portrayal of Ruby and Garnet as a lesbian couple was honestly revolutionary in terms of queer representation in children's cartoons. And I feel like the show doesn't get enough credit for that, because after that you see a big change in children's cartoons. Like it really starts here, and also with Korra and Asami on Legend of Korra, where we finally start to see more portrayal of, you know, same gender couples. And so the creator, Rebecca Sugar, got just a monstrous amount of hate from the fandom. I'm still not entirely sure why. It's really just this type of fandom tends to be have a very black and white morality about everything, and for some reason seemed to blame Rebecca Sugar for the show. To be fair, it did seem kind of rushed, the ending. But to me, it seemed very clear that Cartoon Network was not fair to her, which is not a surprise because now we know that Nickelodeon was not fair to the creators of Legend of Korra.
Right.
And there's other things in the show where people will say it's justifying toxic relationships, because there's like one relationship where like two people are enemies, and then one of them forces a fusion to get their enemy to stop attacking Steven and the crystal gems, and people are like, that's an abusive relationship, if I remember correctly.
Okay. I think I'm just not grasping what a fusion is if you don't need both parties' consent.
Yeah, it's a bit messy.
It's just magic.
It's magic, basically. Okay. It's a children's cartoon.
But yeah.
It's 15-minute long episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see that.
So that's Steven Universe. I feel like there's a lot I'm forgetting. There's a magical lion named Lion. They all live... The place they live is called Beach City. Peridot is like their enemy for a long time, but then she has a little Zuko story arc.
Sorry. I did not need to know the name of the lion if it was just Lion. but I love that I got that information.
Yeah, but they call him Lion. They're like,
oh my God,
Lion,
that's
here.
crazy. This is sounding a lot like Legend of Korra. And
Yeah, where like it had a very strong start.
no, Legend of Korra had an awful start.
And a good follow.
The last 2 seasons were the best. What I meant about it was like,
Wait, I don't remember a lot.
so the final, I skipped, I think it was season 2, that was awful. And I watched season 1 a long time ago, like in college.
Yeah.
Because I didn't watch the Avatar cartoons when I was a kid. That just wasn't, I don't remember why. Who knows, honestly. No, we had Nickelodeon. Because I watched iCarly and Victorious.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember why I didn't watch that one. But with Legend of Korra, the final 2 seasons, like, one of them follows her chasing down a revolutionary who's like, Zahir, voiced by Henry Rollins of Black Flag, which is very iconic to me. Mm-hmm. And so Zahir's like taking down all of the
So iconic.
world leaders, and then through her recovery in that leads to the rise of a dictator in the final season. And I think she did get arrested at the end, but that was I did have a weird moment watching that, where towards the end, because it was like made for younger audiences, even though Korra dealt with really heavy topics. Like, there's a murder-suicide in the first season. That was crazy.
Yeah.
At the end, there's a moment where, like, she shows compassion to the dictator, and I guess for me, I was a little confused by that move, just because the colonization and the re-education camps that were displayed up to that point, I felt a little bit like, I understand the message you're trying to send, same with Steven Universe, but I think it's really tricky when you framed it through something as, I think Korra's a little bit more guilty of this than Steven Universe, because Korra, they had like the concept of nuclear weapons, and like they dealt with PTSD. It's a little strange to get to the point where you went as far as you did with internment camps for benders, and the re-education stuff and the expansion, to then be like, to have Korra show compassion at the end, and to be like, I understand how you got here. To, I forget her name, the dictator in the final season. Kuvira. I always think of her as Zelda, because she was played by Zelda Williams, Robin Williams' daughter. So I'm like, it's Zelda, and it's not Zelda, it's Kuvira. So that is something about, and I feel that, I feel much more strongly about the Marvel movies that do that, where they start out by showing you like a revolutionary who's justified, and then they take all the teeth out of that message. Like, I did not like the Winter Soldier show that they made, the Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
That was it was bad, and the way that they suddenly made their revolutionary, the thing I liked about Zahir was that Zahir was like, obviously radicalized and attempting to change the world through violence. But he never targeted innocent people, because that's the framing of radical revolutionaries who seek to change the world through violence. And that was the issue I had with the Captain America show, because she suddenly turned on, it was like a supply area for like refugees. That made no sense for what they had like set up. But anyway, that is a bit of a pet peeve I have with like, I think that might have been where Avatar: The Last Airbender was a little bit more successful, because they didn't attempt to humanize the Fire Lord. I forget his name. Ozai, yeah. Because that was a dictatorship, and I don't know. I think Avatar was just a more complete story, and that one also dealt with dark themes, but I think Korra didn't quite stick the landing on some things, but I still really liked the show, and I thought there was a lot of really rich world building in it.
Yeah, the thing with Legend of Korra is they only planned the first season, and then as soon as that was out, Nickelodeon was like, hey, now you have to do a second season. And they said, well, we don't have a plan for a second season, so you gotta do it right now. And so you get a really terrible second season.
God, TV used to be like that.
We used to get so much.
Where they're like, well, you have 24 episodes you have to fill, and that's where you get like the fringe filler episodes.
But some of those filler episodes, like on Fringe, were like fun and interesting, and I miss that.
And I'm
in the earlier seasons. Side tangent. I'm really sick of like these seasons that are like 5 episodes long, because like that's not a TV show, that's just a really long movie, and you're rushing plot points and character development, and it just is so unsatisfying in the end, because it's like, well, I feel like you just glanced over this character who could have had a really interesting arc, but you only had 5 episodes, and you had several other characters you had to give time to, which is kind of my feeling on Arcane, which I still haven't finished the second season, and I don't know if I will.
I need to talk to somebody about how that show ended, so please finish it.
Okay, I'll finish it, and then we'll do an episode on it.
Because I think the first season, with the exception of the weird cut to the animated Imagine Dragons performance that happened in season 1, that took me right out. That was strange. But, like, God, that hurt. But, like, season 1 was a very complete story, and, I mean, I think Arcane is meant for adults.
Yeah.
So, it's gonna be different. So, like, I felt in season 1, the themes of Jinx's descent into madness made a lot more sense. I have thoughts on season 2.
Okay. We'll circle back on a future episode.
I just, like, I that is a part of television that's kind of been lost because of, like, the way that streaming has revolutionized everything, because, like, you don't even really have that with Steven Universe, where, like, I feel like there was a lot more, like, writing response to fans, because you'd have your season, and then it would air episode, I forget which show it was, like, Lost or one of them. They filmed it so close to airing it to the point where, like, 5 episodes in, they were looking at the fan reaction and being like, this is how this is going over, and then going back and changing storylines. Because, like, in season 1 of Lost, Ian Somerhalder played that guy, the weird relationship with his stepsister, and they wanted to make the two of them main characters, so they had an episode just around, like, 4 new people. It was either season 1 or 2, where they wanted, like, them to take the forefront. I think it was season 2, because that's when JJ left. But it was received so poorly that they canceled the episodes, and they didn't air what they had, and they literally went and changed the season as it was airing, because everyone's like, we don't want to see these people. And even Supernatural, like, Castiel wasn't supposed to come back.
He was supposed to be a 1 and done, or 3 and done, and then...
And I think to an extent, like, I appreciate that I don't know, this kind of goes back to our discussion last week of where I was saying, like, with music, it's a different kind of ownership that you have over the art that you're consuming, as opposed to, like, purchasing a painting. I don't know that fans should have that much control over the art that they're consuming, because I don't think it's like, you know, like, as an architect, you're hired to design a home for someone, and you are beholden to that person who hired you, and not yourself and your own creative freedom. And I don't know that television and film is like that. And so we do get a lot more nowadays of just, like, you know, things that don't really... Game of Thrones, where, like, they don't really give a fuck what the fans think. They just go ahead with it.
Well, to be fair to Game of Thrones,
but that was another...
It was originally a book series, so, like, they already had a lot of fan response to go off of to the book series.
They did. Well, but they diverged from the book long time before the show ended.
I think...
Because they ran out of material.
Like, they got, I think, 3 or 4... It was around, like, season 5 or season 6 where they started to diverge.
And it was going okay, because there were some weird things in those books. But it was an interesting discussion that happened. A lot of the actors were incredibly defensive over the fan response to that final season and to the finale, to the point where, I forget which actor it was, made a statement that said they felt that it was disrespectful to the writers of the show and the crew who made the show, that everyone kept calling it trash.
I mean, but how much of that was their actual opinion, and how much of that was they didn't want to, like, be seen as someone who was difficult to work with, who wouldn't promote the shows they were with? Because I don't know, I remember looking at the clip.
It was someone who'd been on the show for a long time. I know, but,
like, I remember seeing them doing the table reading, and none of them looked pleased with anything that was happening, and, like, those
this was after it aired. Yeah. So, like, and that's why, like, it was an interesting discussion, because the show was done, all of their contracts were up, And a lot of them had kind of been giving their opinions in a way about what they thought about the final season already, like not just to Peter Dinklage. Like, I thought it was very funny that one of the first people who made like a big statement about it was Jason Momoa, who was like, I simply don't accept that this is my Khaleesi's ending.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like...
He was always a very strong protector of her and her actress, yeah.
Right. And now knowing what we do now about how she had, I don't remember if it was an aneurysm, but she had that whole brain issue the first season. Knowing all of that now and how she was afraid to say anything because she was so new to the industry, it sheds a new light for me on how close they were. Because I know a lot of people were like a little weirded out about it because they were still... They've been friends for like many, many years.
He was very protective of her.
And knowing now what was happening, and then also the fact that she had to renegotiate her contract later on when she finally like became famous enough so that she would stop having to be naked every season. Mm-hmm. So I do think that was an interesting discussion. I don't really have a lot of respect for the showrunners who made that decision. Because that was entirely about they got another job opportunity they wanted to work on.
Yeah, and I feel like with Steven Universe and Legend of Korra, they were very much at the mercy of the studio executives. Because Steven Universe, clearly something happened where Cartoon Network just didn't want... I don't know as much about that as I do know about everything that happened to Legend of Korra, but Steven Universe, they would have what's called Steven bombs, where you would get like several episodes, like the whole part of a season, all in one day. It would be like 2 or 3 hours of all these episodes, and then that's it. You have to wait like several months for the next Steven bomb.
So were they the first that did that? Because now streaming services just will like drop a season.
I don't know if it was a streaming service thing so much as because this is the time when Cartoon Network started having Teen Titans Go be marathoning all the time.
Right. Well, I don't mean like that they posted on a streaming service. I mean like the phenomenon of just like dropping it all at once.
I don't know if it was a marketing tactic so much as they didn't respect the show thing. Because again, this is the show like...
So they wouldn't give them a slot.
I think there was probably some behind the scenes conflicts about the queer representation on the show. Because I know they ran into problems with that when they were trying to get it in other countries. Like, they would, Ruby, one half of the lesbian couple, would often in other countries that were more homophobic, they would give her the voice actor of a man so that they could pretend this was a hetero couple. So the way Rebecca Sugar got around that is they have a wedding episode where Ruby and Sapphire get married, and they had Ruby in a wedding dress, so that...
I see. That's clever.
And I know with Legend of Korra, there was all this happening where, like, you can only watch the shows online now. You can't... It's not going to be broadcast on TV like the others were. And I remember that I believe it was the lead animator who came forward after it aired to say, because he had worked, I believe, on anime in Japan. I believe it was Japan, and he said, you know, it's weird because in Japan, they don't have these issues with female leads, but in America, there was always this issue from the beginning of the show of why is the lead of Legend of Korra a woman? Why can't we have another Aang? Why can't we have another boy? And did you ever hear about what happened to Young Justice?
No.
Young Justice was the show of basically within the DC comic book universe, but it was all like the young people of the Justice League.
That was pretty recent, right?
And so basically the show got killed because the fans were mostly girls and not mostly boys, and they felt they couldn't advertise and market to them as well as they could to boys, so they killed the show.
But that's just not true. Statistically, you can convert female audiences to sales and make more money than you can male audiences.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
So the network just looked at this and said, this is made for chicks, we don't want it. Ew, this for girls, they have cooties.
Let me quickly Google this to make sure I have this right.
That's so stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, that was it. The other thing about Korra that was very unique was it wasn't just a female lead, it was a female that was very muscular and wasn't traditionally feminine. Like, she was she was attractive, but she wasn't like an Asami. Like, Asami was traditionally feminine, but then also had these masculine traits in her personality, whereas Korra was much more physically, quote-unquote, masculine and a little bit more androgynous, which, like, I don't think that's really masculine it made a lot of sense. She was also darker skinned. Like, it made a lot of sense for her ethnicity, where she grew up, the type of, which also is like, yeah, if you were gonna have an avatar who like knows they're an avatar from birth, you'd have them training like that and they'd be ripped. And it was a running gag throughout the show where people would be like I think it was in the final season, because Asami and Korra were spending so much time together, they'd be like, the avatar is coming. And like Bolin's grandmother was like to Asami, was like, oh my god, you're so beautiful. And she's like, well, I'm not the avatar. Korra is. And she'd look at Korra and be like, are you sure?
Yeah. Not that conventional.
So like, right, which I think was another thing worth noting about the show, which made it very special, because there are a lot of women who look like Korra, who are very attractive and beautiful women, but are made to feel like they're not because they have the Sarah Connor shoulders. But like, Sarah Connor's hot too.
Sarah Connor's very hot, yeah.
She's just jacked, and like, that's fine.
There is this...
I mean, I also grew up with a jacked mom who had kind of a square jaw, so like, watching Korra, I was like, oh, she's probably my auntie or something.
That is so true of how these shows really tried to do something new and interesting and progressive, you know, trying to like show kids, or Legend of Korra was really more for teenagers, but, and like people in their early 20s, but still like showing young people like who hadn't previously been portrayed in shows that like, you too can have a place in the universe, you too can be the hero of these stories.
Right. I feel like now although I do think cable television's having a little bit of a comeback with the Abbott Elementary success.
Yeah.
I think that there's far less of an opportunity for smaller, no-name people to pitch shows that get picked up, because they don't really try dumb shit, although, you know, there's 911 on Fox is still going, and they got Angela Bassett on that show. I every time I see that, I'm shocked.
I need to watch that.
She can do no wrong in my eyes. I don't know that you do.
Okay. Good to know. Never mind. I have other shows to watch. That you have told me to watch.
Very stupid show. That's like, it's kind of fun sometimes, but like, it's also propaganda at the end of the day. Like, whatever.
I mean,
most of it is. But like, I feel like a lot of the like network shows are like propaganda shows or whatever. And there's much less of...
It's a very easy format to get a show on, I will say. I mean, like, I wish we had more amateur detective shows, like Miss Marple. There's, like, so many British television shows on Miss Marple, but, like... And, I understand why, because it's, like, the Monster of the Week. But unlike a Monster of the Week show, like Supernatural, where, like, you need a budget for, like, special effects, in a propaganda show, you just need a person and some clothes.
Right. But I mean, like, Supernatural wasn't the first of its kind. Supernatural was very clearly, like, a Buffy iteration.
I would even argue it's X-Files maybe was, like, one of the first that...
X-Files was, but what Supernatural did was a lot more in line. Now that I've, like, gone back and watched several seasons of Buffy, like, that was the blueprint for a lot of the shows that we see now, because like her whole thing was like, you know, the Winchester boys were like young and hot, like not in high school, which I don't think Buffy should have ever been set in high school. I think that was weird considering some of the themes that came up. But like the whole thing is she's this young pretty girl who's like cheerleader, who's supposed to like have a bright future and can do whatever the fuck she wants, and then she can't because she's a vampire slayer. And you see a lot of that in Supernatural, where like Sam clearly doesn't want to be a hunter, he wants to go to college and he wants to do his thing, but it follows him everywhere he goes. I will argue it followed Buffy a lot worse than it did Sam. Sam could never survive what Buffy survived, but
I mean, I will say, from what I saw on Tumblr, most people really didn't give much of a fuck about Sam. Like, most people kind of just...
Because he's whiny.
He's not Dean, who's just, like,
and like
rough, and...
He's not Dean.
Dean's doing the whole tortured soul, I don't have to tell people I need help thing. I'm just gonna make a bunch of funny jokes.
And Dean also was the quintessential, like, I'm taking over the family business because you can't.
Because you're my baby brother, and I'm gonna take care of you, even though you're an adult now.
Yeah, but then there was also a lot of I sacrificed my life to do this, and you can't be fucked to come do this with me for a few months? Okay, pretty boy. But, yeah, it was interesting going back and watching, like, I think the reason why I credit Buffy is because the SFX, and I haven't, like, watched X-Files all the way through, but I always remember X-Files was a lot more of, like, an implication.
At some episodes.
Whereas, like,
some episodes do.
Joss Whedon had the most unrealistic werewolf costume I've ever seen in my life. He had Seth Green running around on all fours in like a ghillie suit and trying to convince us that was a werewolf. And Willow ate that shit up every time. I was like, that's my man. I was shocked watching that show. I forgot what SFX used to be like, but you know what? I miss it. Because the dumb shit they do now, I don't want it. I want to go back to the, like, really intense sculpted
forehead, but just the
like,
forehead.
Bone structure that they it literally was just the forehead that they gave Spike.
Just the forehead.
That's another one. Spike wasn't supposed to be a main character on Buffy, but obviously we all loved him because he was hot and had a British accent. And so the network said, bring Spike back. And Joss Whedon was so upset that the fans reacted far better to him than the character he wrote to represent himself. He literally has a self-insert in Buffy. It's the worst character on the show, and I hate him. But he was so upset by it that he wrote a really gross scene.
Of course he did.
And, like, wrote him off the show in a really, like, violating way.
Of course he did, because he's just...
That was, like... Exactly. But, like, that was another one that, like, Spike was the original Castiel, where he was just supposed to be the vampire who blew into town for one day and then left, and then everyone was like, but we like Spike. So then he was written into as a major main character.
Yeah. It is interesting how these shows can just be, at times, so great and so wonderful and so, like, what's it called? Changing what's been done in TV. So, groundbreaking, that's the word. And at other times, just such an utter failure at what it's set up and just really fails to carry the baton of what the rest of the show, because shows are also very collaborative. So this is why I'm kind of like... I feel like in some cases fan responses are good to listen to. Usually they're not. Usually please don't do what the fans say. But like sometimes it is good to keep in mind, because sometimes showrunners, like you said, they just have a self-insert character that they just want. And it's like, well, maybe let your self-insert character go and just write an interesting character.
Right.
Yeah, but overall, I think the relationship between fans and TV shows should remain just like, these are the fans, they enjoy the show, they get what they get, the creators and the writers, they're in control. But like they should still, I mean, there's nuance to everything, they should still take it into consideration if every single fan is saying the same thing over and over again. It kind of, this is a side thing, but it reminds me of how Westworld, they saw on Reddit, people predicted the ending and they got mad about it, so they changed the ending. Which is... That's
literally... Although Lost stuck to their guns, they didn't give a shit that people had guessed it.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what happened with Lost, although it was on online forums.
And I will say, like, if the only thing holding your audience is solving the mystery, you've written a bad show. And I think people still would have watched Westworld even... Because, like, people really loved that show for the characters and what those characters were doing and where those character arcs were going. And it's so weird how obsessed people are now with, like, you can't solve the mystery or else it'll ruin the whole thing. And it's like, well, no, you could just write an interesting story. Like, how many people know the ending to famous shows that, like, have been out for several decades and they still go back and watch those shows?
It reminds me of, like, damn, that really was a theme of the time. Because Lost was one where, like, everyone was watching every week. And I don't remember when Lost was airing. I watched it on Netflix in high school after the fact, but like that really was a theme of the time because it was Lost. But the two shows that I remember most that did that was Gossip Girl, where no one knew who Gossip Girl was, and Pretty Little Liars, where no one knew who A was. But I couldn't stay with Pretty Little Liars, so I don't. From what I've heard, that one had a whole. No one really They threw in a bunch of stuff and a bunch of winding. Do you know when I watched the pilot when I was young, and I liked the theme song, but that girl walks into English class and her teacher stops and is like, oh my gosh, she's so pretty. No, thank you.
Yeah, because they slept together.
Who let this happen?
Wasn't that the thing? They slept together,
Yeah.
and then she shows up to class, and he's like, oh no, I slept with a student. And then the show's like,
Oh, that's right, that predated.
now they're going to have a relationship, and anyone who has a problem with it, we're going to portray as being weird and stupid. And a whole bunch of teenagers watched that show, and everyone was like, this is fine.
That was like my dad and I a few years ago. My dad is the king of finding shows that lasted one season and getting heavily invested into it, and then we end it. We're like, that was really interesting. I wonder where it was meant to go. And then we look up all the actors who are in it and what they went on to
God.
do. And you end up recognizing them after a certain point. Like Walton Goggins is having his moment right now, and like my dad and I are really into Justified, and he was one we would see pop up in like movies and TV shows, and would be like, it's Boyd Crowder, and now he's having this massive moment where everyone really loves him, and we're like, that's our guy. But we went back and we watched a show called Invasion, and it was genuinely an innovative take on like body snatching, and it was like,
Oh, it's the one with the spines, right?
No, that was the
okay.
other one. That one got a good 5
Oh,
seasons. That one, and it had another guy who always shows up in those shows. We know that guy. He's been on a lot of stuff. But this lasted 1 season. It had William Fichtner, he was on, did you ever watch Prison Break?
No.
That's a show of mostly men. I figured you probably
No.
wouldn't have
Yeah,
watched
not
it.
really.
He's been in a, have you seen Armageddon?
Wait, is that the one where, I know this, wait, the world, all the internet and the power is
No.
gone, and this girl is like, we're gonna go on a journey to find this guy.
And the
And her
dad
uncle
from
goes with
Twilight's
her.
in that one. My dad follows Billy Burke to whatever shows he does. But no.
Is he a fan of his from Twilight?
No, my dad's never seen Twilight. He likes his television work.
Okay.
But no, so Armageddon is the one with Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck with Liv Tyler, and I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. Is none of this ringing a bell? Yeah, where...
Oh, that was a TV show? I thought that
No, it was a movie, but William Fichtner was in
Yeah.
it. But, like...
Okay.
Do you remember that movie? The asteroid was coming, and they were like, we can't teach astronauts how to drill oil, so we're gonna take these oil drillers.
Yes.
I love that
Okay,
movie.
The main thing I remember about that movie is Liv Tyler is in a relationship with this guy, and the bald man
Not just any guy.
is not...
The Boston guy with the Duncan.
Wait, pardon, say that again?
That's Ben Affleck. She's in love with Ben Affleck.
Yeah, it's Ben Affleck, but he's like one of those childish adult men, and so the dad is like, but he's not her. He is her father, right? Or is he like her adopted father?
Bruce Willis is her father.
Bruce Willis is her father.
And she works for his oil company.
Yeah, and so does Ben Affleck.
So she visits the rig.
And so,
Yeah, he's an oil
isn't
driller.
at the end he's like running a toy car over her stomach or something?
They were animal crackers. I hate that. Okay, I know I don't hate that. I know that. I know I love that
Okay,
movie.
yeah,
I've watched it a
that's
few
fair,
times
yeah.
with my dad over the years. It's so stupid. Michael Clark Duncan was in that one? That cast was stacked. They had Steve Buscemi was in it.
Isn't the what's his name? The wow guy, you know?
Owen Wilson was in that movie. Dude, that movie is a trip. It's so, like, we watch it and we laugh. It's so good. But William Fichtner was the Air Force guy who comes on with them, who's the only one who knows what he's doing, who's like, no nonsense. He's like, I gotta get home to my wife and girls.
Does he not get home to his wife and girls?
He does get home to his wife and girls.
Okay, he does. Okay.
Spoiler alert for Armageddon. But anyway, so here's this show called Invasion.
Yeah, okay.
That was about aliens, and it was a genuinely, like, interesting take, because it was, like, took place in the Florida Everglades, and the whole inciting incident is there's this major hurricane that happens in the Everglades, and something came in with it, and there are some people who got stuck in the storm who are now acting different. And so it's one of those where you get the perspective of, like, the whole town, and a very young Evan Peters is in it. He was literally, like, 17.
Oh, wow.
And then you also have Leanne Rimes' current husband, who's, I don't want to get into that drama. He was in it when he was younger. And so you have all these people, like, just starting their career, but there is a teenage daughter who's, like, 17, who ends up having a thing with the deputy who's, like, 23.
No.
And as the storyline was happening, where like he's visiting her in the hospital, and like infatuated with her, my dad looks at me and both go, ooh, as this is happening, and my dad just kept being like, this was 2004, it's 2004.
Such a far off distant age. We didn't know anything then about age differences.
No, but that was such a common thing. Like, even Pretty Little Liars was like later. Yeah. I think that was during the recession. So like they were doing that for a while.
And it's always a teenage girl and a guy in his 20s. Always.
Mm-hmm. It's always a sweet guy in his 20s who's like just trying to do the best he can, and like, oh, he has this awful choice to make because this hot child is standing in front of him.
And there's always like some adult who like finds out about it and is like, you cannot do this is bad, and then they portray that person as the villain somehow.
Weirdly, no one really had a problem with it in this show.
Yeah.
I think everyone was trying to look at it and be like, something weird's happening here, but she was close enough to 18 that they were just, there was a lot happening in that show where like, by the time that started to happen, they were like, something strange is happening, and like, it was like a quick like, we need to come back to this later, and then they just move on to do something else. I'm sad that it ended. It was interesting. And then there was I'm just now realizing how many shows I've watched that had like the weirdest concepts that lasted one season, because there was another guy that we called Cheekbones who was in another show.
Tell me about
But this is the thing, is we watch all these, they were so fun, where they'd go for like a season and they'd be like the stupid, like just the stupidest concepts. There was one we watched, I forget what it was called, but it had Steven, the guy who everyone wanted to play Cable, the older guy with all the white hair, Stephen Lang or something. The whole concept is that like Earth is deteriorating, we're in an apocalypse, and so they've revolutionized time travel. So if you win the lottery, they bring you back to Jurassic times where there's more oxygen and you basically start over.
Wow. Okay.
And that was the concept of the show. And my favorite part was, I was like in high school when we watched this, and I think I was younger. My dad had this knack for pointing out where like we'd all like watch it and be like, now, do we think those were high quality prop guns that they had, or did they spray paint Nerf guns? And you could tell that they literally spray painted Nerf guns. But like these, I feel like we don't have that as much anymore, except in shows like 911. But they still get a big budget because it's Ryan Murphy.
Yeah, that's really...
Someone needs to stop that man.
I mean, people watch his shows because here's the thing, I feel like the only way they get viewers to stick around these days is by making the most batshit insane plot lines. Mm-hmm. Like we saw that with Riverdale. Like we all make fun of Riverdale, but people tuned in. And like we're talking about 911, people tune into 911 because like
my dad.
Your dad watches 911. Your dad watches a Ryan Murphy show?
Dude, my dad watches everything. If it's a television show, my father has probably watched it. Strictly Cable.
Okay, fair enough, yeah.
My dad watched the 100, or what was that show?
He watched the 100 about the lesbians?
Dude, yeah.
Lesbians? Oh my god.
Yeah. He had a lot of thoughts about like the writing and everything. He's watched everything because he lives for that shit. Because like, our favorite genre is like the crappy 90s movies like The Rock, and Con Air is one of my favorite movies of all time. That makes no sense. And Nicolas Cage has really long hair in it.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, and that has a Trisha Yearwood song in it. They used to do that in film. Or even like Lost had that The Mamas and the Papas song, and they're not as like forthcoming with music and things now, except for Stranger Things. But that was the other thing I was going to say, is I feel like there's no in-between now. Mm-hmm. You get these like 5-episode seasons, or you get the fucking Duffer Brothers who've decided, we're going to drop 10 movies.
So ridiculous.
And you guys just have to watch 10 movies now.
And they're not even like
halfway
structured like a movie. There isn't like, it just feels like an episode that doesn't end with like no good pacing or editing. It's just like, it's not really a movie because a movie has editing and pacing and a clear beginning, middle, and end. It just like feels unending.
Because like last season when they did that, so much of that was dedicated to the relationship between Mike and Elle, and it got to the point where literally every time, and my dad has this with like, my dad hated Carl on The Walking Dead. If there's a young child in a show, my dad hates them. No. Like, there's a specific archetype of, like, a child in a show where my dad's like, they're so fucking annoying. Like, Carl in The Walking Dead caused so many issues just because he was a child, and that was the point, is, like, you have a young kid growing up in the apocalypse, and he, like, no, he should know better. He should know better. If you're growing up in it and you're, like, getting your bearings in it, you should know better. But, like, he would just get impulsive and do dumb teen shit, and then my dad would just be like, not this fucking guy again. He'd just be like, why is he doing that? Like, someone get him off the show. And have you watched The Walking Dead? Like, are you cool with spoilers?
Sarah, I don't know if you remember this. You've already spoiled all of The Walking Dead.
Perfect.
And I already gave you permission, like, 10 years ago to spoil this show for me.
Perfect, because I haven't watched it in like 7 years. But the day Carl died in The Walking Dead, we were all just waiting on my dad's response, because he like couldn't watch it for a day. The phone call I had with him, because I was at college, he was like, finally. And then like a season later, he's like, now everyone's annoying. I kind of wish Carl was back here, because everyone's annoying now.
Yeah.
But, like, it got to that point where, like, Mike would come on screen and my dad would be like, oh, this guy.
Well, to be fair, he did get annoying after season.
He's so whiny.
He's great in season 1. He does still have these good moments in season 2, and then after that he's just...
I think for me, it's really hard for me to care about children that age in a relationship. And I can't, and that was a big thing my dad kept stressing, and I really agreed with him on, was like, when you have these relationships of young kids and the show's revolving around children who are supposed to be like 14, I can't give a fuck about their boyfriend who moved to another state.
Because, like, who is still with their boyfriend or girlfriend from when they were 14? Well, actually, I have 2 aunts.
I didn't even have one of those.
And an uncle who are with their high school sweethearts. But, like, they're the exception to the rule. Most of the time...
No. This is high school sweetheart. We're supposed to believe that these two have been, like, consistently and hanging on since they were, like...
middle schoolers.
Middle school... She was fucking 11 or whatever. I don't remember how old she was supposed to be in that first one.
I really thought it was her age, yeah. And then it turned out she was just the 11th child. Anyways.
Strange show. But, like, I don't know. It's really interesting to, like, reflect on some of those shows. And, like, I think animation especially, it's very hard to get an animated show made now. There's very few networks you can go to.
Especially a 2D animated show.
Yeah, because, like, the only 2D animated shows people really still watch are, like, Simpsons, whatever Seth MacFarlane makes, and even, like, Big Mouth. I heard someone say they felt that was John Mulaney's attempt to get an Emmy, which I thought was interesting, because that was him and Nick Kroll's show. I just couldn't ever get into it.
They're so ugly. All these shows are just so ugly, and I'm so sick of it. Why can't adults...
I think we need to blame Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, and honestly, probably the entire generation who, like, loved that show so much as it was airing, who won't let go of it.
Because, like, Rick and Morty was interesting in the beginning, and then it,
another ugly show.
Rick is basically the embodiment of r/atheist.
That's what I've heard.
But that one was, like, it was just really fun to go back to 2D and play with some of that and push the concepts and, like, you know... That's kind of run its course, and it's really hard to find studios that are willing to put the money behind 2D animation because it takes a lot of time, and we've seen this with, like, the way SFX is going with, like, 3D design. They're innovating ways to do that faster, whereas with 2D especially, like, God, Into the Spider-Verse was a whole other nightmare about the way they burned through those animators, but that took time because they layered the 2D over the 3D, and there was hand drawing involved, and so that takes time. But, like, you know, it's Marvel, they don't want to pay for that, and then TV studios get even less. I think the only recent one I've seen was Invincible. That was one that was like a 2D animation that took off. I never finished season 1. I should go back and watch it, but that one was interesting. But, like, you know, you can count on one hand what's airing right now that's 2D animation that's interesting.
Exactly.
And then if people talk about kids shows now that are, like, good, because I feel like a lot of parents, I know some, like, younger parents, and they were saying, like, Bluey's a really good show, but that's not, like, a Steven Universe or...
No, that's...
I mean, Gravity Falls
Little
was
bitty
just
children.
exceptional.
Yeah. That's like
Little
first
baby children,
grades,
yeah. There's not much else going on. It's probably on YouTube.
It's probably on YouTube. Yeah, it's probably being made by independent creators who, when they have time, I know webcomics are popular, and every once in a while you'll find a webcomic that, like, for one of their, like, chapters or pages will do something animated. You know what's interesting is I see, like, animators will, like, animate scenes from books. I've seen a lot of animators do that for Gideon the Ninth. So, like, this... me trying to get Sarah to read Gideon the Ninth.
I know. It's in my library.
But anyway.
Can I be honest with you for 1 second? Yeah. When, not to go too dark, but, like, when the Neil Gaiman stuff, the reason why I sent you that text that was like, is this, like, a no? I don't know why. I thought he wrote Gideon the Ninth for a long time. So I was really confused when you were like, you need to read Gideon the Ninth. I was like, okay. And then I clicked, I was like, this was written by somebody else.
Gideon the Ninth is written by a fabulous lesbian author from New Zealand.
And that was, I saw
Tamsin
and
Muir.
I was like, okay, this was just on me.
Yeah. Tamsin Muir, who...
So like, the first few times you brought that up, I was like, oh, interesting. And then I was like, something must be wrong. I need to do my research. And then I did, and I learned.
I like that you never brought this up to me. You never were like, Mo, why are you trying to get me to read Neil Gaiman? He's a terrible piece of shit.
Because the way that you had talked about it and the way you, like, fled to me to, like, alert me that there was a problem with Neil Gaiman, I was like...
Oh, I see. Okay. Because
I must be misunderstanding.
Yeah, because I was a fan of Neil Gaiman.
So I didn't want to come out.
And I am a big fan of Gideon the Ninth.
Yeah.
So you were like, these two must be related somehow.
I conflated that they were related because I got them at the same... I got the audiobooks at the same time. So I just, in my head, they were in the same category. But I didn't correct you or, like, say anything because I was like, I think I need to look into this further. This isn't tracking.
No, Gideon the Ninth is written by a New Zealand author, Tamsin Muir, who is actually a very cool person. She is the only author I will go out of my way to find every single interview and read it because she always has such really interesting takes.
Okay, love that.
Yeah, but anyway, getting back to children's TV shows.
Yes.
Trying to wrap it all up. I think we've covered a lot of ground here today about these TV shows and the impact they have on their audiences, and whether or not creators should take those audiences' opinions into consideration, and how we should filter how we watch these shows keeping in mind that a lot of them are made for younger audiences who are having different life experiences than adults. Right. And therefore the lessons are different for what young people are going through versus what, older adults are going through.
Yeah. That creator who made Steven Universe, have they made anything since?
So, here's the thing. You have, like, the creator of She-Ra. He's doing great. Wait, let me double check pronouns.
We're respectful on this podcast.
Yeah.
Of how people want to be referred, so take that shit elsewhere if you're not going to be respectful.
N.D. Stevenson. But N.D. Stevenson, he did have a very big career before She-Ra. And he still is, like... He also made Nimona, which I believe... Wasn't that nominated for an Oscar or something? Anyway, circling back. Rebecca Sugar.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that was nominated.
I feel like I just haven't heard... I believe Rebecca Sugar's pronouns are they, them. I just haven't heard a lot about them since Steven Universe, and, like, the vitriol they received from supposed fans of the show. I cannot emphasize enough how much people just really hated them. And it just didn't make much sense. I'm looking at their Wikipedia page right now. So, like, they also worked on Adventure Time, but, like...
Oh.
Steven Universe, I feel like, was the first time... Yeah, Steven Universe is the first time they were a creator. Before that, they were a storyboard artist on Hotel Transylvania. They were a story writer and storyboard artist for Adventure Time.
I've heard that's another gem.
And they also worked on a short film. Yeah. But yeah, this is one of the reasons I wanted to cover this, because, like, it is a very creative, interesting show. It has a lot of fun episodes, and the creator, I think, did something really interesting here that deserves more recognition, especially for pushing the envelope on queer representation in television. And I don't think they've really gotten the recognition they receive. They should be.
I also
receiving.
find it really sad that we haven't heard, and that we haven't heard what else they're doing. And I had asked that because I should have brought this up earlier and I won't dwell too long on it. But this kind of reminds me of how the guy who does all the Mad Max movies, I'm blanking on his name.
George Ramirez?
George, whatever his name is. George Miller, thank you.
Yeah.
His formative work before he did that was Happy Feet. And I think that's very... And I saw an interview with him as he was going around doing press for the most recent one he did. And someone interviewed him and talked about how they felt like Mad Max was a next step and in the ideas represented in Happy Feet in a different genre, because Happy Feet at its core, I have a lot of thoughts about that movie and the Christian nationalism themes that exist. And also I think it's funny we let Robin Williams get away with playing not one, not two, but 3 different Mexicans in that film.
Yeah, that's a movie.
But it's Robin Williams,
yeah.
So I guess we let that slide. It's like Jack Black and Nacho Libre. We've just decided that's okay. But I think that stands because at its core, Happy Feet is about the justifications and the end result of climate change and the way that you see the different religions of each subgroup that justified and made up these reasons of why there was no resources for them, when the truth was there were no resources because of the deep sea fishing. And Mad Max is on the other end of the spectrum of this total desolate wasteland that's supposed to be post-apocalyptic LA, or at least the original was. And you see a lot more of that doom in the George Miller version. And I mention that because I wish that we allowed people to iterate more and to take their ideas, because the first project you do might not be what you're after. And if you don't have a chance to keep working or take the notes and make changes to the next one, then you are stopping the creative process. Every time I watch anything that Nathan Fielder makes, it's very clear to me that he's chasing a very specific thesis in everything he does, where he gets really, really deep into where is the line between manufactured and reality, and that's just what he keeps pushing every time. And every project he makes is taking things he learned from the next one and pushing it even further. And I really wish that we got to see more of that from people like the Rebecca Sugars of the world, who put their foot down and said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to put the Ruby in a wedding dress because I see what you're doing, and working under the constraints that the network gave them. Or even when I've watched Legend of Korra, I texted you and I was like, oh, that's it. And I didn't understand that at the time that it came out, even for 2 women at the end to decide we're going to go on a vacation together was a statement, and them holding hands was such a point of contention. I really wish that we didn't get so caught up in some of these little things, and that we got to see what could Rebecca Sugar do in today's context?
Yeah.
So much of what they did back then was taboo or pushing the envelope, but there's so much more canvas to work on now because we've progressed from that point, within how far you can progress in 2025. But that is something I agree with, is that I think that's one of the reasons sometimes having that much ownership for fans is a problem, because I think some of it's needed, but then you're not really letting the artist get there the way they need to get there. If that makes sense.
That definitely makes sense. I think artists need to be empowered more and to make more interesting and more groundbreaking art. Yeah. I'll definitely agree with everything you just said.
Yeah.
So that's our show. Thank you for tuning in. We will listen to you next week. You will listen to us next week. We're not going to listen to you.
We're not listening to you.
No, sorry. This is not an audience opinion based show.
This is not a democracy. I'm sorry. We're not sending surveys out to you. I'm sorry.
To reiterate from our first show,
We're not playing that game.
you are not our friends. Unless you are our friends who tuned in.
I'm
So
sure-
thank you to our friends, but our fans who are not our friends, you are not
You
our
know
friends.
who you are.
Yeah.
You know who you are. If you don't know who you are, if you have to stop and question, is this about me? It's not about you, honey. The song on the radio was not written for you.
That's all I have.
Thank you for listening to our ramblings.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.